This is the Perfect RIA, in case you didn't know. Bringing you all the strategies to help your business grow. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Sit back and listen in while you feel the beat, yeah!
The dishwasher rule doesn't count if you break the dishwasher.
Welcome back, TPR Nation, to another amazing episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I am your co-host, Micah, and with me, as usual, the legendary Matthew Jarvis. How's it going, bud?
It's good, Micah. Now, I don't know about all of our listeners here, but if you ever seen like a video or of a recording of a production studio and there's like a million dials and gauges, I feel like that's what Micah's house is turning into. What went to just us pressing record on Squadcast now Riverside is now like Micah has an entire
slightly off timing.
It's an entire soundboard on delivering massive value. He's going to be like the Jim Cramer, the Mad Money show, where he's got all the bells and the whistles.
But just to be clear for our audience, yes, this would be an example of playing Office. So there is an element of it. As long as you're crushing things, you can do a little bit of it.
Hey, interesting note on playing Office. I saw this came up in a book I was reading recently that was saying that the damage to your productivity from multitasking, from adding just one additional task, is allegedly equal to smoking marijuana. Now, I have not verified this myself, and it seems like a bit of a stretch, but apparently there's a 20% reduction in productivity for each additional task that you add. So if you have your main task, like creating this podcast, and then you're also checking email, productivity down 20%, and you're also watching Facebook, down 20%, and also LinkedIn, down 20%. You can quickly get to 0% productivity, which, again, Mike, I think what differentiates rockstar advisors, people say, wait a second, rockstar advisor, Matt, Micah, Benjamin, Brent, whomever, they're not in the office very much. But the time that we're in the office, we're getting so much more done than everybody else because we're focused on that thing.
You know, Jarvis, and we talked about it before on the productivity side. So, and we'll have team members, and this actually happened recently as well. We've done it before, but recently, actually, I was talking to my kids about productivity and multitasking, right? And Lana was at her horse riding lessons, and the instructor goes, "Hey, Lana, how well can you multitask?" And she turns over, she goes, "Not very well." And she's like, "Well, that's something you need to learn." And Lana's like, "Actually, multitasking doesn't work. What did she say? She said it even better. She said, because the instructor, she's like, "Well, you can only have one conscious thought at a time in which you're acting very well at. You can run many subconscious thoughts, like I can talk and walk, I can breathe, right? Yes. There's a lot of subconscious things I can do at the same time. So that level of multitasking is 100% okay. But what we're talking about is your conscious thought. You can only successfully execute one conscious thought at a time. And if you're trying to do multiple conscious thoughts, it goes well. It goes not so well.
Yes.
And so, Jarvis, that went through. It was really funny. She told that to her horse instructor, and the horse instructor continued on trying to get her to multitask, which really delayed the lessons. But anyways, other topics. When we came home, she's like, "Hey, Daddy, you showed me that study before, but where is it that multitasking doesn't work?" And so we went through that exercise, right? And the exercise is you write down the entire alphabet, one letter at a time, A, B, C, all the way out to 24. And then underneath it, you write down the numbers corresponding to each letter, 1, 2, 3, 4, exactly out to 24. And then you time yourself when you do that. And then what you do is you multitask. You write down letters first and then numbers. So A1, B2, and you go through and do it. And it's fascinating. It takes you 20 to 50% longer to do the exact same exercise because you're changing your brain going from working on letters to numbers. Now, could you eventually train yourself to be fast enough where it's going to be the same? Sure. Go for it. This works in kids. This works in adult. And it's a great side-by-side learning exercise. It isn't complex to do, but really illustrates the point of be really careful about your conscious brain and what activity are you giving it.
Now, if you haven't done this exercise, because I remember before I had done it, you're thinking to yourself, well, if you're an idiot, it takes longer to go A1. Tell me, that's what you thought, right?
That's exactly
like, if you're an idiot, do this. Do this with your team. It's educational for all of us. Mike, I do have to add one little piece of flavor to your story. For all of you, those of you listening who don't know Micah's daughter, Lana, that was not a disrespectful statement she was making. It would have been with the sweetest voice, the most kind, curious, like, because I've gone out like shooting with them, and she's like, "Mr. Jarvis, would you like me to show you something on how your shooting stance is?" And I just want to highlight that, Mike. I know it's obvious to you. I want to make sure to our listeners, like, Lana would do it with like the sweetest, most like, "Well, did you know that it doesn't actually make you more productive?"
Yeah, good point. Very much. It has to be respectful. Yeah. All right. So on that note, that's not correlated at all. So hard transition. Let's talk about when things go wrong. Hard left. When things go wrong, and things go wrong with value adds, right? Value adds are taking wildfire on the industry. Not as much as Surge just yet, but we're working on fixing that. Surge is definitely off the rails. It's fan-friggin-tastic. You're seeing this thing come up everywhere. Yep. And value adds is this next thing that we need to take wildfire in the industry. Why are we so passionate about this? Because it is life-changing for your clients, not just for us, not just for our team. It is life-changing for your client because you're empowering them to take action with things. You're empowering them to do it. One of the horrible things that can happen in a client's life, in my opinion, is when they are disempowered to have any action, any control in their future, right? This comes in a very depressing and negative state. You can see this a little bit on the medical side. We're going through some medical issues right now with Kel. We're trying to figure some things out. And right now, so much of what it is wait and see what the doctors have. And there's nothing that proactive that you get to do. And so you're in this suspense land going from specialist to specialist trying to figure things out, right? And we were noticing it, just saying, you know what, we feel very disempowered by this. We got to get on the other side of the wheel. And then anytime I'm looking, Jarvis, at another industry, I always try to pull it back to me and say, great, what am I doing for my clients and how are we doing it? And says, you know what, this is the importance of value adds because we are constantly empowering our clients to make a difference in their financial future. It's not waiting on us to figure out all of the answers. We're saying, hey, every single quarter, we're going to give you where you're at. We're going to give you some pros and cons and some things you can positively do to make sure that you are on track with financial planning.
Yeah, totally. And that's really a filter. That's one of the key filters of a value add versus economic commentary. We want to draw a wide moat between sending your client economic commentary, which is worse than worthless, and a value add. A value add provides specific, actionable advice. So the client can look at it and say, oh, I know that I have X, and if I want to change that, I need to do Y and Z. So it's very specific to them, and it's actionable. An example would be the beneficiary value add. It's a very popular one that we've created where the client's saying, oh, my children will receive $487,000 each when I pass away in a lump sum. Is that what I want? If yes, perfect, no problem. If no, great. During our next meeting, let's talk about some other planning strategies.
And Jarvis, if I can pick on that one just a little bit, it's not just the fact that it says that our children will receive $487,000. This beneficiary report comes and says Johnny will receive $480,000.
Yes.
Sue will receive $480,000, and Timmy gets $892,000. Wait, how come that's not equal? That's why we're trying to show it to you, right? Do you really want the disparity this way, or do you really want Johnny to be able to get $482,000? And when you take this from this ambiguous children to all of a sudden a child and one person and put a name on it, it becomes more real. Now, if you've ever done estate planning, you know this, right? When clients are having a hard time, like saying, who do I choose and whatnot, you know, we'll have them do their estate planning documents, but then put a blank line in there. And then all of a sudden, when they get the document in front of them, the draft, and they read it, their mind automatically fills in the blank line. Boom, right now it's become more real and there's a person in there. So that's a huge value add tip. We also have an estate planning course that you haven't gone through. I'm recording with Rod Zeeb, which is fan-friggin-tastic. So it's a great value tool for you.
Yeah, and of course, for our Backstage Pass members and Invictus members, copies of all these value adds that we're talking about is inside the program because that's why the program exists. Now, Micah, as valuable as value adds are, they can go wrong. In fact, as you and I were typing up notes for this, so for those of you who don't know, when Mike and I do these podcasts, we do them every Monday morning. We spend a few minutes outlining and brainstorming what the podcast will be, and we have a Google Doc that's going that we can both type it at the same time. And so I'm watching Micah type his list of ways that value adds have gone wrong because I just mostly make Micah do all the work. And my first thought was like, Micah, how did you know that story? Like you typed value add goes out and advisors don't know about it. And I'm like, I don't remember telling you that story. Oh, wait, you've made that same mistake.
No, I have your office bugged. I was talking to Nathaniel in your office and I was getting all the scoops. Or, yes, I have done the exact same things. And so a lot of this, and it's embarrassing, quite frankly, just to throw this stuff out there. We're also just human and these things happen. And one of the things that we are committed to in the journey of the Perfect RIA, because it's all about a journey and we're all on this together. Yep. Is figuring out what works and what doesn't work. So when we have a fail, it's going to be a public fail because we're going to share it. We're going to tell you what happened. We're going to walk through it and say, okay, was this preventable? Where was the responsibility in this? How do we drop the ball, etc. And guess what? We have failed with value adds because when we were doing this was kind of at the forefront, in my opinion. I didn't know anyone else at the time that was doing this, kind of at the forefront of this creation and doing these things, and things went wrong. And I wish I could say Our mistakes ended when we were figuring it out. But unfortunately, we're human and we still have mistakes. So Jarvis, let's go through some good fails because who doesn't like a fail video?
Yeah, and let's remember, this is why most advisors don't do value adds. They're hard, right? It's also why most advisors can't charge a premium fee, right? They say, hey, I can't really deliver much value, therefore I should discount my fee. In the perfect RIA world, we're about delivering massive value and charging a fee that's accordingate. So, Mike, a mistake that I make again and again, and it's one that we actually have like extra systems in place for, is not having clear timelines on value adds. So I would wait too long to get the value add started. So the other thing I would do, Mike, and I'd be curious, I don't know if I'm curious, you'd make all these same mistakes I do. When after the quarter, we do our value adds the first week of the quarter, I would start rushing them out the door. I would say to the team, hey, why aren't these done yet? And they'd say, Matt, it's the second. Of course they're not done yet. So we agree, we're actually having a planning meeting this afternoon. We agree by what date the value adds would like to go out and when's the latest there. There's a range there so that I don't rush it on my side, but at the same point, the team doesn't sit on them on the other side.
Yeah, and while I would really like to be consistent, same thing at our office, right? I told you to do it at Monday morning meeting. It's now Monday at 9. How come it's not done? Right? I mean, I don't understand this. Have you been doing nothing? Yeah. So unfortunately, that's just the mindset that we have. So we got to say, okay, great. What are the dates? Also, the dates have to be clear on my calendar because I'm going to forget the dates. And then I'm going to harass you about why your job's not done. And so I really need to be able to see that. And I need to be able to see that they're on track for their milestones of completing the project. Because the other thing I start worried about, and this is my head trash, but it's also my team, so they got to help me with this, is saying, okay, is it really going to get done? Because I see no progress happening. Therefore, if I see no progress happening, nothing's actually getting done. So I need to know, what are the milestones? When is it complete? And I need to be able to jump in there and check base and say, hey, making sure it's on track. So one of the things we started when we're doing our value adds is on our L10 meetings we have with Shineskin Associates, it just goes through real quick, what's our status update with them? And so once a week, I'm getting an update with the team, and it's not in depth. It's it starts off with yes, we're on track to get it out by the set date, right? Because that's the bigger question. Are we on track to get everything out? And then what currently are they working on? And then any potential roadblocks that we need to talk about. And so that's just a way that we've figured out to kind of go through this. And then Jarvis, on setting the dates, I would love to be able to say, hey, it's by the 15th of every quarter that we're sending these out. But sometimes that's not realistic, like the 1099 letter, right? For one, it doesn't have to go out by the 15th. That's not super value. And sometimes we're waiting on information. You had the holidays, you had everything else in. Sometimes it takes us to the 20th or 25th to get that damn thing out. And it's annoying because I want it out by the 15th. But again, the clients are getting it before they're getting their 1099 or right with their 1099 and they know it's coming. So it's still massive valuable. So it doesn't have to be a set date every single quarter, the exact same date every single quarter, but it does need to be a set date every quarter.
Yeah, Mike, that's a good distinction. I think that's where we see the gap widen between real financial advisors, right, the ones that are actually practicing in the trenches, and what we like to call armchair financial advisors, right, which would say, all right, what you need to do is like on the 15th day of the quarter, that's when it goes out. But to your point, if someone's on vacation, if there's a holiday in there, you need to like literally have a printed calendar and say, okay, well, the quarter ends on the 31st. The data we need won't be available till the 5th. We'll need to do some other things. We have surge, whatever the case may be. Let's map this out on a physical calendar, make sure the whole team is on board that this is an achievable timeline, and then you can go forward.
Yeah, the other one is the 4th of July, right? So I was irritated because it was like, July 10th and things weren't going out. They're like, well, hey, you wanted to give everyone the week of the 4th off. And then you had a big barbecue at your house. And like all this other stuff is going on, which is all real. And so we had to say, great, what's the reasonable expectation? And sometimes we got to accelerate deadlines. If I wanted to go out sooner in July, awesome. I need to have my team get this done by June 30th. So maybe we got to accelerate those, right? But these are team conversations.
Yeah, you've got to also look, this mistake we've made of when will the data be available for that value add? So, for example, the 1099 letter, we can't with certainty know what's going to be on the 1099 letter until the end of December 31st. Now, we can put some things in order, like we know some of it, but we just have to look in our plan like, all right, well, it's really January 1st. That's a holiday. January 2nd, I don't have my calendar up. That's probably a weekend. Here's when we can actually start doing it. And then we need to say, all right, what will the quality control be? We have on our list like sending the wrong value add to the wrong client, which is super embarrassing. It is not a credibility builder in any fashion. But then you have to look at that process and say, hey, where can this break? where could these get mixed up one client to the next? Where could we on the 1099 letter, where could we miss a 1099? How about an account that closed early in the year and doesn't show up on our reports now? So you need to think ahead and say, where can this break? And then how can I preempt that?
And one of the things that we did is we mailed out, whereas I'm turning to Jarvis over here, we mailed out a value add on our Q3 with our long-term cares to some of our clients because they wanted to get it in person. So we sent it to a print house to get them to mail it out. So went through everything, did that whole 9 yards. Did not think about clients with the same last name. So luckily, all of them were fine, except for our employee who has the same last name as a client. Well, it's actually their parents who are also clients. And so their value add letter, their long-term care letter got mixed up. Now, great news is there was no sensitive information on that, right? It was just talking about long-term care and age brackets, etc. But that still doesn't look good. Thank goodness it happened with that team member and their parents, and we have a lot of great working capital with them to make sure it's fine. But this still isn't okay. So we outsourced a process thinking everything would be fine, but clearly we didn't go to that nth step. So we went back to the people that are doing the printing. They've always done printing for us, but fast, they've done a great job. This is great. Where did this go wrong? And they totally took ownership. They said, yeah, this is exactly where we broke this process down. It was one spreadsheet and another when they split it up, and they just didn't think to look about first names and addresses, etc. So we're going to have to create a new process in tracking that. So these things are going to happen. So the number one thing, we've had other podcasts about this, when something goes wrong, just like in first aid, right? The first thing you do is you stop the bleeding, right? So that's the first thing I want to do is I want to fix the problem. Number one. Then I'm going to go back to find out what happened. So often people want to jump into all these details, like, stop, I don't want to hear the details. Give me what happened to the client, and I'm calling that client right now. And we're going to fix it. Then I'm going to go backwards and say, great, how do we fix the process that created this?
Micah, another mistake that we've made, and I made it several times before I just started listening to what clients were telling me back, we would use terminology that the client didn't understand. So on the cover letter on the value add, it would say, attached is a spreadsheet with your required distributions. Well, the client had in their mind, and given the age of our clients, they probably were thinking those like old green and white spreadsheets. But like Excel or Google Docs, when it prints, it just looks like a report. And so clients would call us and they'd say, hey, I didn't get the spreadsheet. And we'd say, really? How is that possible? Like, how did we not put it in there? And like, well, I had this other report. Well, that's it. Oh, well, you said spreadsheet. And at first, it's easy to push blame. Well, who does it? No. Wait, step back, deliver massive value. Cool. So let's change that terminology. So one mistake that gets made in the value add is using terminology that the client doesn't understand, that they don't also use, right? Jargon, for lack of a better term.
Another one is it doesn't have personal information, right? Now you don't have to have a lot here, but you got to have enough where it's going to be valuable, and it's not a generic newsletter. So in our long-term care one that went out, right, we don't need a lot of information inside of there, but we do need their name. We need the range of their age to say, great, what does long-term care cost in the state that you're going to be at? And we need to put in there if they have a long-term care policy or not that we're aware of, right? Because these things are there. I would hate to get a letter from my financial advisor that says, hey, you need to look into long-term care, and I already have a long-term care policy and it doesn't address. It's like, well, do you just not know this? Did I not provide this? Like what has to happen? So in our long-term care letter, there's a whole line that says, hey, here's the long-term care policies that we are aware of. We changed the language from a previous fail. It says not that you have, but that we are aware of. So if you have a policy and you haven't told us about it, clearly it's not in our system. And now what happens if a client does have a policy, they're coming to us and it's not like, why don't you have this? They're like, oh my God, I forgot to give this to you. I didn't give you this information, etc. And now they can help educate us and bring us that information.
Another easy mistake to make is to not plan ahead for the amount of resources it's going to take to either create the value add or to respond to the value add. So one time we did a value add adding trusted contacts. Now, by the way, this is a whole podcast in itself, because it'd be easy to say, well, what the custodian's requiring that they're sending the notices, how is this a value add? Well, it's a value add in that the client's getting harassed by the custodian for something they don't understand. It's a value add in that we're going to tell the client, hey, listen, Mr. and Mrs. Client, if something's going on and we can't get a hold of you and it looks really suspicious, we need someone else to tell us, hey, you're on vacation or something's happened. And let's work together on this. When I set that up, I thought, no big deal. The client will just give us their names. We'll fill out the form. It'll be no big deal. Well, but then we had 170 clients giving us 300 names, and Colleen got buried with all of these reports to do. And so you need to think, hey, if we're going to do a value add that's going to prompt action, how much action is that going to prompt, and how are we going to handle all of that action?
I love it. Another fail is we sent out a value add and we didn't tell the team about it or explain what it was. We just told them to do it, work through the process, but they had no idea what the substance of that value add was. Why is this a problem? Because then the client calls in with a question and the team doesn't even know what they're talking about, because the client's not going to call and says, hey, I got this quarter's value add on beneficiaries, right? They're going to say, hey, I got this report and I got a question, blah, A, B, and C. Well, what report? Now, my team is thinking they got like a net worth statement or a centerpiece report or an asset report or something like this, right? And it's completely different. So we failed to educate our team on these value adds. So one of the first, in our process of going through a value add, the team has to run all the value adds on themselves. So whoever's running that value add has to first do it on themselves as a client mode, makes sense. Then the entire team gets their own value add. Let's make sure this makes sense, right? And everybody understands it, and they get to see the value of the value add. And then when it's missing information, they also get to see a little bit of that client experience saying, hey, why isn't my information on here? It's because you don't have it in CRM, right? I mean, but they can see these things and they can see how important it is to have the right data in there. And that's a fail we made time and time again. It took us multiple times to fix that. It says, wait, we're not educating our team. That's the reason that this is failing.
Well, Micah, the purpose of this podcast, I feel like we're scaring people away from value adds. Like we're like, hey, it is, but it is a lot of work. Like this isn't to scare you away. You absolutely need to be doing value adds on a regular basis inside your practice, but you have to have a system for success, a process of success.
Yes.
You can, and I love this quote from our good friend Michael Henley, right? You can copy genius or you can invent mediocrity. He says, I'd rather copy genius than invent mediocrity. The best way to do value adds is to find someone who's doing a value add that you like and copy gracefully and with licensing whatever value adds that they're doing.
Yeah, with permission, go through that, I think would be absolutely key, because then you get the idea of what works. And the other thing is the last mistake, then we can get on to action items, is reinventing the wheel. Right? Reinventing the wheel. I see somebody else has created this value add. I said, fantastic, but Jarvis doesn't know how to talk to his clients because it's not like he has a successful practice. I'm going to reward everything in that value add. I'm going to change it all. Then Jarvis is talking about how his clients love this friggin' value add. And I got a dead sauce response from my clients on it, right? It's like, oh, wait, hold on a second, because I projected what I thought would be successful versus knowing what is successful. Yeah. So be really careful on this, because the first thing we want to do is reinvent something and make it our own. Okay, maybe that's a great idea, but maybe it's not. Maybe you should just do what works.
Yeah, boy, there's a whole episode we could do on that, Micah, because when someone tells me an idea, I want to know who actually did this.
Yes.
And I want to hear from them how it worked. So not like, hey, I did this value add, it worked. Okay. How many of your clients responded to that? Like, what was their response? How many hours did it take your team to get it put out? I have no time in life for theory. It has to be like what actually worked or didn't work. I'm equally interested in what didn't work.
And when I'm working with a coach that works with other financial advisors or something of that nature, and this isn't Joe Lucas, by the way, I think he's phenomenal, but I was working with another one and he was telling me about saying, hey, these are things other successful advisors doing. I said, fantastic. Give me their name. Well, I can't do that. Why not? I was like, because now your advice is worthless, right? Because you're making things up. Because I don't want to hear it from the game of telephone. I want to hear it exactly from the source. So whoever is crushing it doing these things, give me their name. I'll pay for their time. I would love to learn what this process is and how it actually works.
Yeah, you don't need to tell me confidential information about their practice. Give me their name. I'll call them. I'll offer them, to pay for an hour of their time or a day of their time, and we'll piece this thing together ourselves. So,
love it. All right, action items, Jarvis.
Yeah,
No?
I was just writing the epilogue to the new bonus edition of my book, the hardcover edition, and I was talking about like, hey, listen, every year needs to be your best year ever, but you have to have a strategy. Like this has got to be my best year ever, and next year's got to be even better. But that takes a strategy. Wishful thinking won't get you there.
Speaking of wishful thinking will not get us there. You need to start on your January value add now. As this podcast is coming out, you need to chat with your team. You need to review it. You need to go through, start planting those seeds. This should be your 1099 letter. This is what needs to go out in January. It's fan-friggin-tastic. You want to talk about a marketing piece as well. This helps with COIs. This helps with clients. And it puts you as the cornerstone in their back pocket about taxes, right? Where when a tax question comes up, they are coming to you, not the tax preparer. Now, why is that better? Sometimes you got to go to the tax preparer. I totally get that. But the clients need to come to you first because you have the entire picture. You see everything that's inside of there and what's going on. You have to be brought into that loop.
I love it. There's so many podcasts. Like we could do podcasts on each action item. Last note, just for our Invictus and our 10X Mastermind members, the first week of December, we'll be doing these live events in person. They are going to be a ton of fun. Mike and I are stoked to be there. For everyone else, be sure to vote early, vote often, 5 stars on Apple or wherever you listen to this podcast. And Micah, until next time, happy planning.
Happy planning.
Information designed to change lives. Financial Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice.